we're going to check out one of my favorite cars of all time. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda in front of a car that I have never really checked out, despite the fact that I have been completely obsessed about this particular model since it came out. And we could probably sit here and do a whole podcast episode, the background of this car and the DB10 concept car that made its way into the James Bond movies and was super sexy and looked like a shark with a V8. And it's just a sweet looking car. And obviously, who doesn't want to be James Bond? If James Bond were on this end of the spectrum, I am definitely on this end of the spectrum, but that's why cars like this give people like me hope that you be cool and suave and sophisticated, even if it's never true. But this is the Aston Martin Vantage. This is the newest version of the Vantage. So the one I kind of remember had a big grille that was open all the way to the ground. They actually have some here at Glenview Luxury Imports. This place is obscene with sexy cars. It's absolutely mind-blowing how many they have. And actually they have the exact car that turned me on to the Vantage. It's the metallic gray one that's sitting outside in the rain here. But if you want that one, or if you're looking for an early gift for me, nice little Christmas present, come down here to Glenview Luxury Imports, pick it up, and you know what? I will be happy to thank you in a video. But this one is one I have been wanting to check out because it's kind of like the next evolution of it. So it was really built on the AMGT platform. And normally when that happens, you really are just redesigning the car. It's really kind of like changing the clothes on it. But the Aston Martin Vantage never was criticized for not being its own thing, from the sound, the look, the feel, the handling. And so the AMGT, well, similar in many ways, is a different car. And I think, again, as we kind of talked about the MC20, the MGT almost skews, as it says GT, to the GT, but this is a little bit more hardcore sports car. And I was just kind of looking over this one here, and there's so many things about it that are just next level. There are just so many little differences. You know, if you were to look at this car and look at the original, you probably miss a bunch of them. And I'm going to talk about that and show you some of the details here. But let's start right here on the front. It's one of the stupid little things that probably won't matter to anyone, but doesn't matter to me for some reason. It's these machine guns coming out of the grill here. I'm just kidding. These aren't machine guns. It's a license plate holder. But what I love is that they are bolted behind the grill here, so you actually don't have to deform your car or anything like that. I've had to drill like a license plate holder into my car before sometimes, and so I just always hate that, but this is like super nice. This is like metal, so it's kind of nice that you think about this. I think this is the radar plate for the adaptive cruise control. You can see we have a camera right up here, so there is no lack of technology. Got this huge diffuser down here. I love this gloss black. I love this kind of red copperish color. It's definitely skews more red than copper. I feel like Aston Martin also had like a reddish copperish color that skews more brown, but this is really nice. This logo right here, the emblem, I believe is actually done by a jewelry company. So even though it kind of looks like your standard emblem, I will tell you a couple things. It is super beautiful, super polished, and it is actually really large. Look at my hand next to it. Like, it is the width of my hand. And so in terms of like an emblem sitting on the front of a car, is really big. Now, one of the big things that changed here on this particular model was the headlights. So if you remember the original Vantage, they were very thin, almost slit like headlights. So looks like the headlight is kind of sitting in that same position here, but they have cut the opening open much more, almost very much like the DBSs. So it kind of ties it in, I think, with the family a little bit more here. I think this kind of gives it a little bit different look. It kind of extends out the hood a little bit because you kind of have all this open glass right here, but there's just so much crazy jeweling inside the light elements here. You get these little like cuts and facets in front of the headlights. You've got these like little crystal blades above for the turn signals. It's just, man, a lot of detail to it, but kind of makes it a little brighter eyed, right? The original Vantage, I think you might say, it was a little squinty. This is kind of a little bit more aggressive, bright eyed, a little more wide eyed. The other thing that I really think is a difference here is on the original Vantage, this little cutout here, this little breather hole, I think was a whole separate piece. And in fact, there was an aftermarket so that you could remove that. You put in some different things. Sometimes instead of a body colored panel here, they had like a vent that would be there. And so this is a little bit different. This is all one piece of the fender now, so there's nothing you can do about it, but it actually makes it look a little more unified. And so you don't have like a cut line there. So that's a little bit different. Aston Martin right there. Look how wide the door sill is on this thing. My whole hand can fit into this. So obviously, I think this might be carbon fiber too, but man, that is just really big. The ground effects there. Obviously, the door handle is very Aston Martin, and actually maybe a little bit of Tesla-like. I think kind of the door handles kind of pop open here, but you get these eagle wing. I call them eagle wing doors. That's something I just made up. It's certainly not official Aston Martin, but the doors go up. Some people said, oh, that's to clear curbs. You know what? I don't think a lot of Aston Martin owners are parallel parking and worried about clearing curbs. I think it's just a cool thing. I think that Aston Martin designers were like, we're going to put normal doors on these cars. They're just going to go out. They ain't going to be billionaire doors, you know. But what we can do is put normal doors that go slightly up, and that's pretty cool. And they would be right. It is pretty cool. So you can see just the amazing, beautiful Aston Martin craftsmanship, leather everywhere, kind of like, you know, your college days when you got all suited up to go to those leather bars, Alcantara. Obviously, some switchgear here that you'll be familiar with in the Mercedes. The big thing here, the big change as far as I can tell, is that the instrument cluster and the center console, which are going to be new onboard systems from the newer Mercedes, the whole look has gone a little bit cleaner, more futuristic. So if you remember the original Vantage, it had kind of like this carbon fiber, almost skeleton looking interior and buttons on it, and this is just a much cleaner look. If I were to say what this looks like, it probably looks a lot like kind of the new Porsche interiors, the new Cayenne, the new Panamera. So just a very clean looking interior, all switchgear is flush, obviously a big screen there. And so the screen is down lower too, so it's going to be easier to reach the original screen. I don't even know if it was a touchscreen. I think you used the controller, so it was a little bit higher up. But man, just super, super awesome. The seats, Alcantara perforated, just look fantastic. I mean, it's almost everything about this is a little understated. And what I love about this too is you get the carbon fiber up here, these little slits on the grills. I don't actually know that you can color coordinate to the surrounds on the grills, so you used to be able to kind of select like a dark gray or a piano black or a matte finish, and so this all might just be the way it comes now, which is just fine. But nice detail here is that the seatbelts themselves are also color matched to the car. That's actually one of those supercar details that I really love, when you get a seatbelt that looks like the car. That's something that you don't necessarily see every day. The other difference here, I may be wrong about some of these differences, and probably some people are watching are like, what is he talking about? But, you know, if I say it and it goes on the internet, I think that makes it true. So the other thing that I think here is that the back haunches here, the rear quarter panels that go over the wheels, are actually a little bit wider than the original Vantage 2. Now, that is kind of interesting because I love big, strong rear haunches. You know what? A big, wide rear end, it's kind of good on everything from people to cars, but in the back, it just gives it a muscular look. I love wide body stuff. Obviously, the Hellcat wide body is super popular. Everyone loves wide bodies. So the fact that this might be a little more flared out here, I mean, it gives this huge, huge shelf right here. And that is just really dramatic. I just love the look of that. If it's not wider, then that's a shame because it looks wider, so they've done something. But I really do believe it's a couple inches wider. And kind of makes me wish that the original Vantage maybe had that huge, wide rear end on it too. Because I'll tell you what, I'm just looking at it. Whether you're looking at it from the front, straight on, or from the back, it just looks crazy. The other thing that I love about this, and I'm glad they didn't change this, is that this taillight configuration, which is actually similar on all the Aston Martins now, is just the coolest taillight I've ever seen. And it's so simple. Like, there are some cool taillights, but man, I just love how it flows all the way around. It's almost a little bit representative of like the front grille, you know, so it's got a little bit of that kind of kick up, and so you kind of get that mirrored in the front and the back. But man, I just love that light. And the way these are smoked out, I think that is an option. You can get them a little bit more red or smoked like that, but this is just like a dark gray, and I love that. So sexy. All right, the rear end here is also really sexy. Obviously a huge diffuser, quad exhaust. The one thing that they actually did right, and I think it's just a legal thing, are these little bumper overriders. So I think that these two pieces here are required by the US government for 5-mile-per-hour standards, so you know you don't hit directly here and damage the bumper. And they aren't super obnoxious. You remember in like the 80s and 90s when you had to put like legal bumper overriders on stuff? They were just crazy. I remember the Countach had some crazy ass bumpers on them, but these aren't bad because I feel like a lot of owners, when they get cars, they'll get rid of all the US mandated stuff and just kind of go Euro spec. But I don't think you'd take these off. They actually look kind of killer. Maybe actually put like little metal points on the end here to make them even look a little more lethal. But the reason the Vantage is my favorite car, it's like no matter where you look on this car, every angle is just sick. But they actually have a fairly usable trunk on this too, so it's not like a car that you would compromise on. You could take it for a weekend. Or so many of these types of cars, because of the way they are designed and the way they are shaped, there just isn't a lot of a luggage room. But I think that this car is actually a car that you can live with, which is, I guess, just me trying to justify spending the money on these types of things. But man, it is just awesome. Even like the little duck spoiler, is that what they call it? Like on the older Porsches, I kind of remember them in the 70s 911s, that kind of like that duck spoiler on the back where it kind of kicks up. I think it actually helps with the aerodynamics, but man, it just gives it just a little flair. It's something you don't see on a lot of cars because a lot of cars are so fearful of integrating something like that. They kind of want that sleek look. They'll even find ways to do and cheat the aero in more subtle ways, but that just looks awesome. Everything about this car, the matte wheels, they're definitely offset differently. So the front wheels are definitely more flush. You got less offset on the center hub of the wheels in the back. Beautiful yellow calipers. Everything about this is super sexy. I'm just looking at this car and my pants are kind of feeling a little tight. It's awesome. So gorgeous. Just love how short the windows are too. Made no compromises here in the design. They just raise the side. They make it look super aggressive. It's like a car that I feel like actually is designed that way on paper and then actually reaches production the way the designers intended it. So good on Aston Martin. Thank you for doing it. This car is not cheap. Dylan, we were talking about the price a little earlier.
What do we got?
Total suggested retail $235. So Dylan and I are going to split it. I'm going to do the 35 and he's going to do the 2, and I'm going to get on weekends and he'll get the bulk of the week, Monday through Friday. That's kind of what we decided would be fair. But man, $235, even at that price point, I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, it is worth every penny of $235. And some of those original Vantages, used, a little bit cheaper, I don't think are crazy out of line on price. Awesome. So this is one of my favorite cars of all time. It's probably my favorite car ever. And if you want to buy this particular car, you can, and you should. And then you should call me for a ride. But it's down here at Glenview Luxury Imports, and it is for sale, and it can be yours. And I am super jealous if it is. But till then, still my favorite car. Peter Von Panda, out.